Let's go. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Paula here, and today I'm coming to you again with a book review. If you haven't seen my last book review, I talked about Crash the Chatterbox by Stephen Furtick. Today I've got a book that's actually by a friend of his. This book is called Through the Eyes of a Lion, Facing Impossible Pain, Finding Incredible Power, and it's by Levi Lusko. I hope I haven't butchered his surname. Okay, so I love this book, and I think at first when I started reading it, it was hard to kind of get into because it is about death, and I will warn you now, it's a little bit triggering, it's a little bit sad, but it was really amazing to read about death. I can honestly say that I conquered a fear of mine, which is just the fear of death in general. I don't like to hear about death, I don't like to talk about death. I've never been to a funeral. Actually, I've never been to a funeral. I'm a grown woman and I've never been to a funeral. And it's not that there's not people that haven't died around me. I just don't go to funerals because I don't do death. And then I read this book and it gave me a completely new perspective as a Christian about what death is and about how death is not the end of the story. So if you are kind of like feeling a bit like, ooh, and whenever you think of death or hear of death, or you see or hear of someone who's on the verge of death, as they say, and you have fear of that, I would definitely recommend this book. So what's it about? Well, basically, Pastor Levi, who owns a church in America, as they all do, he wrote this book, I think a couple years after he had to bury his daughter. His daughter was 5 years old and she died just before Christmas, I think 5 days before Christmas, from an asthma attack. Whew, that's heavy stuff, and it was really amazing and breathtaking to hear him relive it. That sounds kind of sick, but he really relives it in the book, and there were points where I'm on the train and I'm literally on the verge of tears, like, oh my gosh, this guy has had to bury his 5-year-old daughter 5 days before Christmas, and he went to preach a Christmas service. Yeah, it was intense, but it's amazing because you really do hear how God revealed himself to him and his family during this time. When you read this book, you hear the testimony that he has. He has nothing but good things to say about his daughter and what she has brought this world, even though she was only here for 5 years. Which is probably more than what some people will ever give the world, and it was crazy to just read that and learn of their story. I really have to applaud Pastor Levi and his family for being brave enough to open their mouth and share this story. This is a story that could easily have been kept within their family, within their friends, within their church, but to actually share it with people. There is someone who's grieving who will read that and grieve a completely different way, and as Christians we are called to grieve differently than non-Christians. We are called to grieve in a way that glorifies God. I don't know how that sounds, but we're called to grieve in a way that knows that this is not the end of that person's life, that there is more to life than this, there is more to the world and life than where we are now. Yeah, one of the stories that really got me was basically just after his daughter had been pronounced dead in the hospital. They left to go home. They were leaving the hospital, going into the car park, and his wife turned around and said, oh Levi, you need to go back and invite those nurses, the nurses who had just helped his who had just been with his daughter. You need to go and invite those nurses to church. And he's looking at him like, our daughter's just died, like literally 5 minutes ago, and you want me to go back and invite these people to church? And his wife was like, yeah, go back and invite them. Here's a track, go and invite them to church. And he goes back into the hospital and tells the nurses, please come to church this Sunday for our Christmas service. God loves you, you know, I would love to see you there, and if you do come, I will preach this Sunday. Bear in mind that this was like a day, like a midweek, I think this was a Thursday or something, and the following Sunday he actually gets up and preaches, and the nurses came and actually became Christians that night. That story got me. Oh my gosh, I am an emotional person as it is, but I was like, Jesus, you're so good. It was yeah, it's just such a lovely book. I couldn't recommend it anymore. It was definitely triggering, but sometimes you need to be triggered. Sometimes you need to realize that there is a problem there, or there's something that's triggering me because this is something that I've boxed away or hidden in my heart for so long, and I think that was death for me. And I don't want you to think it's a sad book. Pastor Levi is literally hilarious and writes in such a comedic, funny way, and you're reading a book about death, but you're not sitting there crying. You're laughing, you're joyous, you're smiling in public places if you're like me. me reading in public, and it's actually really heartwarming. Of course it's going to be sad. It's a sad thing to not being able to watch your daughter grow up 100%, but the way he speaks about certain things, the way he presents his stories, the way he is thankful for her life and for what she has done for him and for so many other people, it's just so beautiful. When I was reading it, I was thinking, if I was in that situation, how would I react? Would I react the same way? And I'd love to think I would, but it takes a special kind of person, it takes a special kind of bond with God to really continue to love and live vicariously after something like this has happened to you. So I'm just going to read a few quotes, and if you have watched my previous video, you know I've said this is not my words, these are literally words from the book. I'm going to say the pages. This is the war. Every moment of every day, we must make the all-important choice of whether we rely on the naked eye. Will we trust what we see is there, or believe what God says is there? And this was page XXIV. So this was literally in the introduction, but the introduction was so fire that I had to take some quotes from it. Our faith works in the fire and not just when life is fun. Page 62. Public victory comes from private discipline. Oh, come through. Yes. Page 105. The more we hurt, the louder we become. This is why, though it is tempting, you must not be selfish with your pain. The things God deposits in your spirit in the midst of suffering are the same things that someday other people desperately need. Page 112. This one really got me because this is why he wrote this book. He could have been selfish in his pain, and I think we could not ever blame someone being selfish in their pain, especially with grief. But he's actually been so loud and so vocal about it that it helps people. It helps someone else who's going through the same thing and feels so alone and feels like no one else is. So that's why sometimes it's okay to be very open about your problems. It's okay to talk about it, and I think I've always been the kind of person where I only ever share the good, but now I'm a bit more like, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm overcoming, this is what I have overcome. You know, it's a testimony. You don't necessarily always have to be at the end of the testimony to give it. Too often we are full of ourselves. God can use us only when we offer him our emptiness. Page 179. You've probably heard the quote or the phrase, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. Yeah, hopefully I said it the right way around. And it's so true. We have to come to God with open hands, with empty hands for him to fill, and he will use you in your situation and use you in the way you are, in the place you are, and that's what I think he did with Pastor Levi. Pastor Levi actually kept a diary during this time, and he talks about the diary and talks about the actual raw pain he's feeling in that moment, and he made himself available to God. So God used him in that moment and used him in that pain, and he can do the same thing for you. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this book review. Go and check out this book in the description box. I'm just loving reading so many books like this, like reading enriching books. My soul and my spirit has been fed well. I'm on to my next 2 books I'm actually reading at the same time, and hopefully when I finish them I'll get some book reviews out for you guys, because I'm enjoying just talking about things that I'm reading. I would love to have like a book club. I don't have anyone to discuss these books with, so I'm discussing it with you guys. Hope you don't mind. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like rating, comment down below and tell me you enjoyed this video, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!
Oh, I want that real love. Yeah, I want that real love. Not that time.